Hi, I'm Reva with Quality Sewing and Vacuum, and today we're going to talk about adding borders to your quilt, or it could be for a table runner, whatever project you may want to work on. So, what is a border? A border is the part that goes around your project. Again, whether it be a quilt, or it be a table runner, a placemat, whatever it may be. And if you have any questions as we go, just type it in. We'll be sure to answer them. This particular piece has two borders. It has the skinny green one, and then it has the big, wide yellow one. Now, we're going to talk today about how to make sure you have the right amount of fabric length to creating a border. And then we're also going to talk about mitered borders, which are really super duper fun and look awesome. And they're easier than you might think. And then here's another one. So as you can see, usually they're rectangular in shape, right? So this one has a self-colored border here that goes around, and both of these are square or straight on set borders. They are not mitered because they really don't need to. It's all the same color. This is another just simple border. It's a really wide one, and then applique was added over the top of it. So this is a wide border, and then the applique was added. And again, it's not mitered because it didn't need to be. So when would you might want to have a mitered border? And that is if you're doing a quilt or a project and using a fabric that would look especially pretty, or you might have a different reason. Okay, so let's grab the next one out, and I want to show you. This is kind of an in progress one. So I am going to shift this to the magic of our video and move it out of the way. But let's take a look at, let's see this one right here, not that one. This is a double border here as well. Okay, so I have the little dots, and then I have the print, and it would be absolutely fine if it were on just the rectangular, with just straight sides, so our project would actually end just like that. Now, I already have batting on this one, but you wouldn't have batting on yours at home. But look at how cute this would be if this was on a 45-degree, and it just would, instead of having this piece come straight across, it would end, and we end up with this really sweet little mitered corner. Okay, so it's really easy to do. So what we're going to do, in essence, is and we're going to talk about how to decide the length that you need for your borders. But what you're going to do is make sure you have an excess of borders, the proper amount, and you stitch them on almost all the way. And then what you're going to do is take the one piece that's going to go over the top, and we're going to just fold it back at a 45-degree angle. So my little tail comes out at 45 degrees, and then he's perfectly happy and mitered. Okay, now that's the easiest way you could ever do a mitered corner on a border, is simply have excess of fabric and fold it. And then I like to take my Quilter Select glue stick because it dries so fast and it washes out, and then just hold it in place for a minute, and you can even use a dry iron. Then you have it all ready to go, and I will show you how to stitch it together too on a regular border. Okay, you guys ready to see how to measure for a border, how to pick that, and then how to do it as a miter? Ready? I hope so. Okay, so I'm going to get my quilt here. It's a really big quilt. It's huge. It's massive. But I figured we could work with this. This is actually 18 by 21. So it's just, again, you can do this technique whether it be for a whatever project you may want it to be. A wall hanging, a quilt, a table runner, a placemat, anything you may want it to be. So we know that this is 18 by 21. How do we know that? Because I told you. Okay, and I measured it. Okay, so that's what we're working with right here. Now, this is where a notepad and a pencil come in really handy because you can jot down your notes. So now what you need to decide is how wide you want your borders to be. Okay, Now I cut this at 5.5 inches. Okay, so that means that I want my border to be 5 inches wide because I have a 1/4 inch for seam allowance here and a 1/4 inch seam allowance here. Okay, so that's pretty easy. So I have 21 inches, and then I have 5 1/4 on either side. So we're going to round up. Let's make it 6 inches so we have some extra, to play with, because you just don't want to be short. That's just really sad if you're short. So let's say I have 6 inches on each side. So I have 21 inches, and I'm going to add 6 inches and 6 inches. So that's 12 inches total, right? So that's 33 inches I need for my side border. Okay? I hope that makes sense, because you're going to have it long enough to go the whole way. Now, let's back up a step. That's what we're going to do for doing our mitered corners. If I was simply doing this as a straight border like I had on the ones I showed you, what you want to start with is I usually start with the skinny ones, the shorter length, and I will, or one of them, I just pick one of them, and I will stitch it right sides together, stitch it and press it, then trim it flat on either side, so it's exactly the same. Then this becomes a bigger number, right? This was 18, so 18 and 12 is 28, 20, 30, right? So then I would put 30-inch pieces down the sides. Okay, so that's an easy way. Is just simply take your the width that you want, stitch it on both sides, trim it up, then measure it and make your borders for the other side. Now, since we're talking about that, once I have this stitched here and this stitched here on my quilt, or even before, when you measure, you don't want to just measure one spot. You want to measure it at the top, the middle, and the bottom, and see, because sometimes we don't quilt straight. Can you imagine not quilting perfectly straight? I know it can happen, but if you measure it 3 times and average out that length and cut your pieces to the same length, so that way you can true up your quilt. Okay, so hopefully that helps. Okay, so that's how you put on a regular square. The regular rectangle border is really, really simple to do, but let's start making our mitered border, right? So we have our 21 inches here. We added the 12 inches total, 6 on each side, which made that, what do we say, 33 inches, correct? So I'm going to cut off the selvage on my fabric here, because you don't want to work with your selvage. It's actually woven in a different way. It's a little bit more dense, and it will shrink at a different rate, and it functions in a different way. So I'm going to take this and put this on my mat and go over here to the 33, 21 and 12, yep, 33. Okay, so I got my 33 right there, and then I'm going to come and trim him at 33 inches, and you would want 2 of these. We're just going to do one corner today, so I don't need both of them. Okay, now the next one is our 18 inches this way. So 18 and 12 we decided was 30, correct? So I'm going to take my other piece and we'll cut off that selvage there. And then we'll cut it to 30 inches. And I would want 2. Excuse me. And then depending on the width of your border, of course, that number will be different. So you're not going to cut everything at the same size. You're going to cut it depending on your border width. Okay. Done. All right. So now what you want to do, we'll start with the long side first. I don't know why, it just makes me feel good. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to fold it in half so I know where my center is, because we want to have the center matched up because we need the same amount of space on each side. And I'm going to do the same thing with my little quilt. Okay. And then, so here's my mark, and I will get my marking pen so you can see it a little bit better. So there's my center there. And here is my center right here. So I'm going to take my centers and match them up. One right on top of the other. And you can use pins or quilt clips, whatever you like. And I'm going to get my quilt clips because that will just be faster. So I'm going to first pin that or secure the center so it doesn't go anywhere. And you don't want to stretch or pull, just lay it nice and flat. And then we're going to secure them on their way. And I'm going to put one down at the very end. You notice I didn't put one at the very start because that's where my needle's going to go right at first. So I'm not going to stitch that. Now, one thing you might want to do that will make your life easier is I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to draw. I've lined up actually I'll do it the way I would really do it at home. I'm going to line up the edge of the ruler with the edge of my quilt, and then I'm going to come in and make a mark right there. Then from that mark, we can come in and mark ourselves a 1/4 inch because we're going to start a 1/4 inch in and we're going to end a 1/4 inch shy. So let's clip that back together. And the reason we're doing this is because we are going to have to miter, so we need that the corner to be free. So now let's do this a little bit more advanced way. I'm just going to put the ruler on the cut edge at a 1/4 inch and then just mark that, and then I don't have the 2 marks, but I know where to stop. All right, so let's put our clip back in there. Don't know where I put him. Oh, there he is. Okay, so now we're going to come to the machine, and the machine, we're going to go to our quilting patterns and choose our piecing pattern. This is Q-02, and it will put the needle in the 1/4 inch position, and we'll thread the needle, and there we go. Love that. Okay, so now you can put your 1/4 inch foot on. I do not have the 1/4 inch foot on, but that's okay because we moved the needle into the 1/4 inch position, and it is a shorter stitch length because when you do piecing, you want it to be a shorter stitch length. So I'm going to go ahead and lower my needle down into my fabric where my line is, put my foot down, turn my speed down because I'm sewing without a foot control today, and we're just going to stitch right along. And normally I would back stitch at that beginning. And look, my fabric's kind of getting kind of rumpled, so I want to make sure it's laid out straight here so it doesn't go crooked on me. Okay. We've passed center. I saw my mark. And I see I'm getting a little bit off here, so I want to come back and get that straightened out. Let's stitch some more. Now when I get down here to this point, I'm going to go ahead and stop it, take my mark, my clip off, get it realigned, and I'm going to hold it over on the left-hand side. I'm going to turn my speed down just a little bit because I am not overly confident in my skills there. And then I'm going to reverse it just to tie it off and cut my thread. Okay, so now he's done. Now it's time for our next piece. And this is that 30-inch piece, but notice how it is not stitched together right there. It's open. Okay, so what I need to do is I'm going to flip this nice and flat, and I want to find my center of this side again, right? Because we need to know the centers. And we'll take our pen, mark that, and this is a water-soluble pen, so it will go away with water, so we don't have to worry about that. And then I'm going to take my next piece, and I'm going to fold it in half, find the center there, give it a little crease, And then I will mark that just so I can see it better, and you can too. But if you've ever worked with fabric, you know that a lot of times this crease is where you didn't mean for a crease to be, so sometimes it's good to mark stuff so you can find it again. All right, now this one, now that we're all marked, this piece you would actually take over to your iron and you would press it nice and flat, okay? And now this piece will go right on top, matching our center points. Okay. How many of you have done a mitered corner? Did you do it successfully? Because there's official ways to do it, and I learned this from a gal who was an educator for Bernina years ago, and it's like, this is the best way. I love it. Okay, so before I put my pin in there or my clip in, I'm going to go ahead and mark my 1/4 inch, so that way I know when to stop. So line up the 1/4 inch mark with the edge of the fabric. And I'm going to make it long enough. I didn't mention this before, but make it long enough so I could see it when I'm stitching. You know, you can see it outside the edge of the foot. Okay, so there's that one. And then we'll come over here. And this one is a little bit different. It's a little easier to find the 1/4 inch because we have our seam line right here from our other piece because it extends that 1/4 inch. So to mark that, all I need to do is come in just before it, just before that fold, because I don't want to catch the fold, and give that a clip. Okay, or give it a mark, I should say. Okay, so now we're ready to stitch. Lay this out flat. Make sure all your pieces are where they should be. And I will lower my foot, my needle down. Let's see if I can see that a little bit. A little bit off, a little bit back. Okay, there we go. So now when I lower that down, that should be right. So I'm going to start stitching. And now I did my back tack that time. I'm proud of me. Okay, I remembered. Okay, increase my speed a little bit. So we should be able to get going. Okay, we're already at center because this is the shorter side. Let's see if I can live on the wild side since I don't have that foot control. Oh, I don't, because I am starting to slip out. Let's get that repositioned. I'm definitely a girl who likes to sew with the foot control. Okay. There we go. Now we have this all stitched. So you're going to take it to your iron. And I do have my roll and press. So this is the next best thing to an iron if you don't have one plugged in by your workstation. So I have one of these by every sewing machine, and I also have one in my go to class bag or go to retreat bag. So I can do my little bit of pressing. Okay, so I want that nice and flat, and then I didn't do this one yet, so we'll just do this one real quick. And the reason why we want to make sure that this is nice and flat is so that that way the fabric will behave for you. Okay, flip that. Okay, all right. So now let's work on our corner. So if you want to, you could fold these right together like this, sew your 1/4 and hope that you get it, but you never know if you're going to end up with like a, if you've ever done it this way, you might end up with like a little pooch right there and it just doesn't look great. So what we're going to do is have the one lay there flat, take the next one and fold it up at the 45-degree angle, and then take a look. And now, if I don't know if you can see, come in a little bit closer there, Carrie. I've got it pulling a little bit, so I've got this pooch right here. So that means that this is too tight. I need to come this way just a little bit because we need that corner to lay flat. Okay. Now I don't have it tight enough because see, I've got, can you see that? It has a square edge to it. Don't want that either. So I'm going to just give it a little bit. There we go. Gave it a little bit of a tug. until it met right into that corner and it's all lined up. So now if you have your iron, give it a nice press. One thing about the roll and press that is handy, just in case you haven't used one before, is that it does roll, so you're not stretching or pulling, it's rolling over the surface. It has a little bit of a dome here, so it's going to stay centered onto what you're working on, and so that gives it kind of a directed pressure, which is nice. And then it's really sturdy. It's really pretty strong. Okay, so now he's ready to go. And if it makes you feel more comfortable, you can use pins when you get there. However, I do like to just pull him back and take my Quilter Select glue stick and just run it right down the side of my fold there. Lay it right back on carefully. Okay, get it nice and flat. Now we're going to give it a couple of seconds. We want this to set and be kind of held together. Okay, and I will take a pin and I'm going to pin the ends so they don't come apart on me, because I didn't put any glue over here, but this way it's held in place. Okay, now that this is done, here's the fun part. We're going to fold this back on itself, and you have this crease line. Can you see the crease line there? And it goes from the corner all the way up here. And you're going to want to flip that seam allowance toward the quilt on both sides. And I'll grab a pin and just control them that way, just so that way they're behaving and out of our way. Because we want to go from our seam here and follow that all the way to the point. Now, since it's the intersection with the quilt itself that's the most important to do, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start here, so that way I can see where I am. I need to be a little bit more forward. Okay, now I'm going to put the needle down. I'm not at all in line with my fold, so now I will move the fabric, but I had to get that pivot point in there, and I'm going to start sewing 1, 2, and then go back 1, 2, 3, up. I think I went 1. I'm going to have to trim that stitch because I went 1 too many, and I'm stitching like a drunk sailor at this point in time, so it may not look great, but sit down when you're sewing. It's much easier. Okay, so let's take a look. Oh, not as bad as I thought. I've got my seam. Oh, I'm sorry. It's got my seam right there. I can take my pins out at this point in time. And the glue held it in position, so I didn't have to worry about pinning that. But before I do any trimming, I want to open it up and see how we did. And it didn't do too bad. But I do have a little bit of a pucker there because that one back stitch went 1 stitch too far. Remember, I mentioned that I saw that happening. So I'm just going to come in and clip that 1 stitch, and that should help get that taken care of much better. Okay, so there we've got our lovely little miter. It's fun to do if you have like a print, if you do a double border or have checkerboard. That's really cute, but it's really cute with stripes as well. And if you have the stripes going this way, running this direction, it's really cute too, because you could have your miter, my stripes were going this way, there we go, because then your mitered corner would kind of like it meets up and it turns a corner if your stripes are going this way. See how my corner is turning toward the outside? If you had the stripes running this way, it would turn the corner going like that. So it's really fun to play with the different types of fabrics, different prints, and the directions that they're going. So try it with some fun stuff that you have. It doesn't have to necessarily be a stripe. It could be a print that kind of has a linear feel to it. That can look great too. Or like I said, add another little narrow border in with that. And if you're going to do that, like the one that I showed you that had the little border, or the last one I showed you that was the pink that had the floral and then the polka dots, if you're going to do that one, then what you want to do, and miraculously it appears, what you want to do, if you want to do a double border like this, is stitch the borders together first, making one unit. And then you can miter them together. That's a lot less work than trying to miter each one individually and then adding another miter on. So even if you wanted to use 4 or 5 fabrics on your borders and keep going out, that would be really cool. Then just put them all together and count that as one measurement. When you measure your quilt, you add your border width on each side of that for your total length. So if it's 20 inches and it's 10 inches on each side, you need to cut a piece at 30 inches. Give yourself an extra inch so you have some wiggle room. Make it 31 or 32 inches. It's okay to trim off, but you really can't put it back on. And I was really too skimpy with my fabric here. So give yourself a little bit of a break and make sure that you have extra like we did here. We had an inch extra to play with, so we knew it would match up. Okay, so join us next week. We'll have another fun topic on our How Do I. So have a great week, and I hope you sew some borders.